Mr. Nice Guy. It's a term you've likely heard, but what does it really mean in the context of relationships? In today's episode, Dr. Liz and I dive deep into this concept with our special guests, therapist brothers Tyler and Brannon Patrick. We explore how the Mr. Nice Guy syndrome manifests when a man, driven by deep-seated insecurities and fears, constantly seeks to agree with or avoid upsetting his partner. But what are the consequences of this behavior? We discuss how it can actually erode the very foundations of safety and trust in relationships. Tyler and Brannon help us unpack the core beliefs and fears underlying this pattern. More importantly, they offer invaluable insights on how men can reclaim their authenticity and healthy masculinity. This episode isn't just for the guys, though. We include practical tips for both women and men on breaking free from this cycle and strengthening your relationships. Whether you're struggling with these issues yourself or simply curious about relationship dynamics, our conversation is eye-opening and insightful. As the co-creator of Therapy Utah and the CEO of Lyft, Brannon Patrick has treated almost every kind of addiction in every conceivable setting. Brannon began his career in an inpatient psychiatric unit and then spent years gaining experience in an intensive outpatient setting. During his many years of clinical work, he received specialized training, including training to become a certified sexual addiction therapist. In addition to his work with Therapy Utah, Brannon Patrick is also a writer, blogger, podcaster, and content creator. As a marriage and family therapist, Tyler has dedicated his career to mastering an understanding of recovery from sexual addiction and betrayal trauma. He has been married for over 20 years to an incredible woman and is a father to 4 amazing daughters. His hobbies away from work include supporting his children's interests, fly fishing, backpacking, and training River, his German short-hair pointer. Together, Brannon and Tyler come together for the Therapy Brothers podcast and carry out retreats for men. We hope you enjoy the show. Hey friends, welcome to another episode of the Stronger Marriage Connection podcast. I'm Dr. Dave here at Utah State University Extension, along with Dr. Liz Hale, our licensed therapist. Hey, we're bringing you the best we have in research and resources and tips and tools to help you create the marriage of your dreams. Okay, Liz, have you ever heard of the term Mr. Nice Guy? Have you ever heard that?
You know, my clients will talk about it quite a bit.
Yes.
There's a popular book and they want to know more. And yes, I'm so excited for today.
Yeah, I am too. I'm excited to dive into a discussion about healthy masculinity with the Therapy Brothers. We're talking about Tyler and Brannon Patrick. Welcome to the show.
Good to be here. Great to be here.
Thanks so much for joining us. I guess I should say, actually, welcome back, Tyler, right? We had you on the show before. We talked a little bit about addictions. We talked about connections. So listeners, if you have not heard that one, go back and listen to that episode as well. You guys are doing so much good in the world. We're going to dive into that, all of the great things that you do, your focus, your podcast, your resources that you offer. So we'll dive into that. But before we get into that, can you kind of set the stage a little bit for us? Tell us a little bit about your story. It's not often that you, at least for me, to have 2 brothers that work together, that do a podcast together, therapy. Can you give us a little bit of the background, a little of the story, Brannon? Maybe start with you.
Yeah. With Tyler and I, our mom, she's a school counselor. It's kind of in our blood a little bit. And I think, honestly, Tyler, he got into this out of the goodness of his heart. He's just a good man. I got into this I did my undergrad in economics, and I was studying supply and demand, and I thought there's gonna be a big demand for some really good therapy, and I thought, I should go learn how to do this, and I found that, I think between us, like, it's in our genes. We're pretty decent at doing therapy, so we kind of found our callings together.
Oh, that's awesome. Tyler, we've heard a little bit, some of your story and your background, but briefly catch us up to date. And then I'm interested in what was it? How long you've been working together with this?
Yeah. So Brannon's right. You can't be the son of Mike and Linda Patrick and not have some kind of gene for just wanting to be with people and talk to people and listen to people. And we both had that rub off on us. And then we've kind of had life experiences, and we've come from different angles, even though we came from the same family, where there's a lot of
personal reason why anybody goes into the field, and you guys would know this. I mean, you're in the same field we are, and so there's personal reason behind it. And don't let Brannon fool you. Brannon's actually extremely gifted at what he does. He just likes to talk me up more because he's used to having me talked up all the time. So he doesn't know any different. But yeah, but yeah. So I was going to school, and I kind of knew what I wanted to do. I kind of had my certain answers and directions that I would say had been given to me, that I had this trajectory. And then Brannon called me up and said, hey, I'm not really liking the economics thing, but I really kind of being drawn to this thing. What do you think? And I said, absolutely. Like, that's probably who you were bred to be anyway. And so we, in conjunction, went to school together. And then he didn't know it, but I was following my own path of my own kind of struggles and recovery from addictions and things. And he called me one day and didn't know what I was struggling with and said, this is what the niche is for us. This is what we need to do. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, how did you know that that's what I've been working on? And so then we've been together. We've been off and on. He runs his own practice. I run my own practice. But then we have this show that we do together. And we've been doing that together, Brannon, for the last maybe 4 years now. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That is awesome. I love it. And you guys, I love your, the stories, right? The background. Tyler, I know a little bit more about yours that bring you to this, and this passion that you have for sincerely and genuinely helping people, helping them, people on their journeys. So let's dive into this Mr. Nice Guy, this concept. Can we start by you guys telling us a little bit about what you mean by the term Mr. Nice Guy, and how common is this?
So the Mr. Nice Guy term, people hear that and they're like, he's such a nice guy, right? This was actually coined by an author named Robert Glover. He wrote a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy. And the whole purpose of this book was to kind of shine the light on the difference between someone who's a nice person versus a nice guy. And a nice guy is somebody who is actually really, when it boils down to it, pretty insecure and maybe even a little bit self-centered. And they're trying to come across in a certain light to get their needs met and to avoid getting, rejected or something. But what they end up doing is actually just coming across as never making waves or having arguments or conflicts, but then you never really actually come to know them either.
So Brannon, it feels kind of superficial, right? It feels like this, I'm putting on this front almost, maybe stemming from some fear, some insecurity. Don't want to make anyone mad, but I got to really come across and act like, yeah, I'm the man, or don't look at me.
It's a performance-based thing. So, where Tyler and I see it a lot is in treating sex addiction, we treat betrayal. And so we work on rebuilding trust in relationships. And it gets really tricky because, the Mr. Nice Guy will do everything that he's told. Yes, I'll do this. Yes, I'll do that. And the spouse is like, I don't feel safe. I don't feel trust. I can't pinpoint it. Everybody around me is saying, oh, you're so lucky. Like, he's such a good guy. He just doesn't. And she's just like, I just want him to disagree with me. I just want him to have an opinion. I just want him to I just want to know who he actually is, because the only person he is who I tell him that he is. And so when they come in and we try to rebuild trust, it's really a hard thing to get conscious of and to start to look at, because it is looked at as so good. But in fact, it's quite manipulative. Mr. Nice Guys are manipulators.
Mm-hmm. How common? I'm curious. Do you see? And you mentioned this, like a little bit with the patterns and some guys that are really struggling with some addictions or some personal challenges. You see this often?
Full disclosure, you guys, I'm a total Mr. Nice Guy in recovery. Like, I've spent my life pleasing people. That's why Brannon loves to talk about this, because then he can call me a manipulator without actually saying it straight to my face.
No, that's not what I'm doing.
But it's so common. It's so common, especially in the world that we live in, because what's underneath all of that is actually this desperate fear of being rejected. And what they learn to do is become a chameleon. So it's like, if you're married to Mr. Nice Guy and you want to go out to dinner, you ask him, where do you want to eat? And he's like, where do you want to eat? And then you say 4 places. He's like, any of those are good with me. And you're like, please just pick 2. And you're like, no, any, which one do you want? And then And then he's like answering like what he thinks you want to hear.
Want. Right.
Yeah. Instead of like, no, this is my opinion. I'd rather have Mexican tonight than Chinese. And it's so common. And what it's based in is that I'm afraid that at the core, something is so wrong with me that if you saw it, you wouldn't want me. So I'm just going to agree with whatever I think you want me to be so that I don't lose whatever I think is a perceived sense of connection. The problem is that it comes at the price of the stability that comes with having authenticity in a relationship where you actually know the person that you're with.
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful. So it could only last really so long. At this kind of this upfront before, man, this is not healthy.
It crumbles. It destroys intimacy in a relationship because there's not safety and trust there.
And I'm sure it probably shows up in dating too, right? Tyler, Brannon, Dave. And it's not really a very positive thing to be called, look, he's such a nice guy, right? I dated a few decades because I'm married so late in life. And it just seemed like men were like, oh, please don't just call me the nice guy. That true? It's not, they don't really like it either. They don't like that term.
Well,
underneath.
And Liz, I could throw this question back to you, but like, what do women really want? They want a man with some strength.
A hero. Yep.
Yeah. Somebody who knows who they are, who can stand on their own 2 feet. So yeah, Mr. Nice Guy. But to a woman who just wants to be like right and pleased and taken care of, they might fall into the trap of getting into a long-term relationship with a Mr. Nice Guy, thinking, oh, this is wonderful. He's so great. But then you get into the marriage and long-term, it's not great. It's not good.
It's so true. I often think, and I always tell my clients who are single, who do you want to walk down the dark alley with, right? A nice guy, doormat, or a guy who's got a few tats and some knuckles, who's willing to fight and stand up for you.
On the edge a little.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. So obviously there's some things brewing beneath the surface of a Mr. Nice Guy. Thank you for sharing that. What would you say are some of those core beliefs and fears underneath the nice guy persona, Brannon and Tyler?
Nobody will love me as I am. Yeah, I'm not worthy of love. And the thing that you can see, if you know what a Mr. Nice Guy is, you can see that they are actually, we call it consuming your spouse for your self-worth. And so what that means is that they lack that self-worth. They don't know who they are. And I need love, so I need to perform and I need to make sure that you're always happy so that I feel like I'm a good person. And I use you for my self-worth. And yeah, so what's underneath that is a lack of understanding of self, a lack of worth, and a lack of knowing that you're loved.
It's kind of interesting because I find a lot of men, they really do care about their wife's happiness. You know what I mean? They really do want to be her hero. And I think that's just to be celebrated, right? And I just want wives to know that trust me, your happiness is really imperative to him. But it's a little different than what you're saying. It's not at the expense of him, but it's that he feels like I've got a place here. This is my woman, and I can nurture and care for and love her, protect her, provide for her.
I can't tell you. Yes, 100% different. It's like I can't tell you how many times early on in my marriage, my wife would come to me with a discussion, and I would just start agreeing with her on everything, and she'd finally stop me and just say, I just want you to fight with me for a second. Like, just like she'd almost like push the limit to the point that she knew I was crossing my own, boundaries and values. And I'm still just like, yeah, like a puppy. Like, as long as you're still happy with me, we can agree on anything. And finally, she's like, I just want you to fight with me. I just want you to disagree with me. And what's interesting about that is for a partner who's in a relationship with a Mr. Nice Guy, it feels gaslighty almost. It almost makes them feel crazy because they're getting all of this quote good stuff, but it doesn't feel quite right. It feels like it's that consumption part that Brandon's talking about. If I'm coming in my weakness to take from you so I can feel good about myself, that's the opposite of what a good marriage is, which is two people who know their strengths and their weaknesses, and they have permission to work on their weaknesses inside the relationship while also both offering their strengths. And so if I'm showing up with the energy of this is me and here I am. I'm giving that strength to my wife, and that feels different than, hey, tell me I'm good enough. Tell me I'm good enough in this way, whether it's verbally or emotionally or sexually or whatever other way. Like it's a selfish way of trying to fill the void that can't ever be filled by a spouse.
Empty, right?
Yeah.
Tirelessly empty. That's a good comparison. Thank you for that.
Which is much different, right, guys? It feels like this could easily, for some listeners, being like, oh, wait a minute, or I'm not supposed to be kind. We're not talking about, being kind and having compassion and things. So what's where would you say is the line? What's the difference?
A Mr. Nice Guy is, it looks like they are caring for their spouse and they are caring for themselves. So yes, a good husband absolutely cares about his wife, but he cares about his wife out of the genuine, authentic man that he is in his heart. Mr. Nice Guy is acting out of fear. I'm afraid that I'm not loved, so I need to perform in order to be okay. And the way that I know that I'm performing well is through the feedback of my wife being happy. So it looks like I'm serving and loving her. I'm absolutely not serving and loving her when I'm operating from that fear.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Makes sense in my mind. Thanks, Brannon. Well, I'm curious, share a few, if you will, a few potential problems that are created from the nice guy in marriage. And you've mentioned some of these, maybe even an example or two that you've seen without obviously, disclosing names or anything. What does this look like day to day when someone comes in and what is the struggle and what do you see are some of these potential problems in private practice?
I think right at the core, like what we want in our relationship with our partner is to actually have safety and trust first, and then it grows into deeper intimacy as a result of that safety and trust. And right at the core, when you're married to a Mr. Nice Guy, you never are quite sure if what you're seeing is actually what they're feeling and what they're getting. And so it instantly erodes safety and trust. And so because of that, then you have doubts about, well, how much more can I rely on this person? How much more can I share with this person? How much are they capable of holding my emotions? And so it actually causes instability in a relationship that otherwise looks good on the surface. And I'll just give a quick example of this, have a couple that we're working with right now where he's in a second marriage. He's got kids of his own that he doesn't see very often as a result of the way custody worked and moving and things. And he's all coming back now and saying, I need to be a better dad to the kids that I haven't seen in years. And he wants to go and kind of pursue that relationship, but that feels threatening to his wife for whatever reasons are there. If he's being honest, he needs to go and set boundaries with his wife and say, the man I'm being called to be is to actually be engaged in my children's lives again on this level. I know that that's hard for you. I know we can navigate this stuff together, but I need to do that. And instead, what the nice guy does is he goes and he just shuns his kids to perform to keep his marriage safe, but then he's silently resenting his wife, and there's these undercurrents, and there's not the safety, and there's not the reality of like, our situation is that I'm in a second marriage and I have kids and I have to navigate both. And it would be way better to have that honesty up front because that keeps trust in the relationship, even if it means a little bit of tension and conflict.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Yeah. Brannon, what do you think?
Yeah, I just want to, going along with what Tyler's saying, in a relationship where there's a Mr. Nice Guy, you'll see a lot of resentment because, the spouse holds all the cards. And, so I resent her for not praising me all the time. You'll also see a lot of secrecy where I'm inauthentic. I don't show you my shadow. I don't show you certain parts of me. And so it's really common to have some type of an addiction going on behind the scenes because a Mr. Nice Guy will be trying to get their worth somewhere else or numbing out or avoiding because they got all these feelings going on, but there's no way to express it or get it out, which makes them feel worse about themselves, which makes them feel like they need to get their worth somewhere, and it perpetuates the whole cycle.
Yeah. Man.
The whole cycle of addiction. Is that what you're saying?
Of addiction and Mr. Nice Guy. Because now I'm acting out in secrecy in my addiction. Nobody will love me as I am. And so I'm unlovable. I need to perform and get some validation somewhere, which leads back to being a weak Mr. Nice Guy in a relationship.
We'll be right back after this brief message. And we're back. Well, let's dive right in.
Oh, that's so interesting. So if I'm the spouse of a partner or a partner of a nice guy, what can I do to invite something different? It feels so helpless as a woman. Clearly, hopefully, there's some things I could do differently.
Do you want to take that, Brannon?
Well, I guess so. I mean, I think the main thing is to understand what's actually going on, get conscious of it, and then have some boundaries. He will come to you and he will say, please take this, like, please hold this, please, like, here, you make all the decisions, and you hand things back and say, look, I want you to give a thought, an opinion. I'm not going to give the answer here. I'm not going to always step in. I want a man with boundaries, with authenticity. But also to get really conscious of what's actually going on. If you're feeling crazy and you don't know why you trust your spouse because he's such a good guy, it's really helpful to put some words to it and to understand what's actually happening for both of you.
And I would just add to that really quickly that making that conversation transparent can be really beneficial for both parties. So if I'm the wife and I'm seeing that and I'm like, like when it comes out to even the example of where do you want to eat dinner, and then he's always going to try to flip it back on you, it'll be hard work for you because you probably do want to go get whatever you want. But if you ask the question, wait and pin him down until he comes up with an opinion.
Yeah, I asked you the question. Where do you want to go?
Yeah, like whatever that is. Or if you're having a discussion about a specific topic and he's like you can see he's trying to feel out like, what's the right answer here? Don't give him the answer you're looking for. Wait for him to come up with an answer and then sit with it. And then before you give your other response, even if you disagree with him, acknowledge that you appreciate that he has his own opinion. And then you might come back in, because what's happening for a spouse is she wants authenticity from him, but she wants him to also be strong enough to hold what her ideas and opinions are as well. And so value his opinions and then show confidence that he has the ability to actually hold a difference of opinion without it having to be an agreement. And that's a hard part because most of us are a little bit skittish to having conflict, but healthy tension in a relationship is actually a really valuable thing to drawing us closer together because we actually come to know each other through that healthy tension.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that the truth? Is that if I don't know you and you don't feel known, you're not going to feel my love. So when I say I love you, you're in the back of your mind going to go, yeah, but if you really knew me, you wouldn't deem me lovable, right? And there's just that constant, just that divide. Painful. Yeah. Painful to see, and what a relief to be able to help couples with this. Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah, I love that statement, that healthy tension. Yeah, that tension is healthy for that relationship. Well said. And this can't be easy because we're talking, this is not days or weeks. This is probably months, years of this kind of this habit and this cycle, and each of them play this role in, she'll just decide or whatever it is, and he just goes with it and waiting for her to decide. So it's got to take some work really to kind of get out of this cycle. So now if I'm the Mr. Nice Guy, right, and I'm listening to this and I relate to this, what are the first steps to really reclaiming my authenticity, my masculinity in my relationship?
I think you need to start. You don't just start with, okay, I'm going to show up with my wife and I'm going to be blunt and I'm going to be, you don't swing the pendulum to like, okay, now I'm going to, and I see guys do that because they have so much resentment because they've been Mr. Nice Guy for so long, then they just go bludgeon their partner and it's horrible. That's not strength either. Really, you got to look at the underneath. What's like your relationship with your wife is more of a symptom than the actual issue. And the actual issue is doing your own trauma work and understanding who you actually are. And so where I would start is to get a good support system of people who will hold you accountable to be honest, even when it's hard. to start to do your own deeper work, your own trauma work. So you understand why you're showing up weak in your relationships, and you become conscious of that, and you desensitize that, and you heal that so that you can show up more strong in your relationships. So that's where I would start before I'd even really go after a lot of the stuff with the couple.
Yeah, and I agree with Brennan 100%. And I would say in conjunction with that, I'm going to go to work on understanding myself and coming to know this is I. And at the same time, part of who I am, by nature of who I am as a man, as I think, Liz, you said this, I want to be able to be the strong, steady provider. I want to be able to be there for my wife and my kids. And so in the process of doing my own individual work, I also want to be developing a couple of core things. I need to develop assertiveness, not aggressiveness, even though aggressiveness is sometimes necessary too. I need to develop assertiveness at the same time that I can balance the skill of empathy. So if I'm doing my own personal work and then in the relationship, I'm trying to learn to balance assertiveness and empathy, those are the steps that I'm going to take that are going to actually create deeper safety and trust in the long term, even though it will be very messy. You're going to go through a very messy middle part of that to develop those skills.
I see that. Assertiveness and empathy. I love that combination. And Brandon, coming back to what you said, I'm so glad that you said it, not letting that pendulum swing, because I can almost see some guys being like, oh, you want me to be the tough? I'll be the tough guy.
Yeah.
But it's different than just these outward behaviors, right? It's this interchange that needs to happen inside, as well as those behaviors, because I'm assuming I can just behave as a Mr. Mean guy and still have the struggles, the tough guy.
Absolutely.
But still be struggling internally, right?
Yep. Mr. Mean guys don't create trust either in relationships, believe it or not. Yeah.
Well, what other tips do you have, Brennan and Tyler, for couples who might be in the struggle of Mr. Nice Guy and a woman who just feels like there's just no safety, there's no foundation there because she just doesn't know where he stands because he's so nice and void of opinion?
I think what Brandon said earlier about helping a Mr. Nice Guy for a partner who's also married, number one is making it open and transparent. Like that's one of the biggest things that doesn't happen in a relationship when you're married to Mr. Nice Guy is the openness and transparency, and then getting your support too, learning how to kind of put things back in the court and say, this is yours to have an opinion on, to a principle you need to stand on. This is not me to control you. So being able to slow down and pull back sometimes is you've almost been trained to do for him everything he needs to do so that he can then think he's good enough, and to learn how to pull back and almost like still be there leaning forward, but create just a little bit of space and distance. Sometimes you need your own team to help with that. To go, I'm feeling crazy right now. Like this is what's going on. And then have 2 or 3 other people, who are saying, oh, remember, this is the cycle you're trying to break and you can see it now. Here's the boundary. Hold the boundary, right? So good, healthy boundaries work is extremely important on both sides for different reasons, as well as that support on both sides is also
I imagine
really important.
Women get resentful also, right? Because she's holding a load. She must, right? I don't think resentment just belongs to the husbands probably, but she's probably also getting very resentful of him. Like, where are you? Who are you?
Yep. Mr. Nice Guy, they're notoriously codependent. And
they're notorious what? I'm sorry.
They're notoriously codependent. They lack boundaries. And so like understanding differentiation in a relationship is really important. And even a step further, understanding healthy femininity and masculinity in a relationship is really important. And for the couple to honor that and encourage healthy femininity and masculinity, rather than trying to just become one person, but to realize we're different and we're supposed to be different, and I want you to be different than me, and to support that differentiation is really helpful.
Beautiful. Just real quickly, so our nephew is older, what is he, mid-30s, and dating someone pretty seriously for the first time. And when he came home, he said that was his one concern is, I don't know if we're similar enough, because he likes to, I don't know, just think about some very ethereal type things. And he likes anime, and his last girlfriend kind of liked that short-term girlfriend. But I just thought that was so interesting. And sometimes I think we confuse that we have to be so alike to be well married or well matched. There's a difference, right? And we want to complement each other without being the same.
Right.
I love that word. Instead of like, I don't know if we're alike enough, is the real question is, are we complementary to one another? That's the right question. Like, is what I'm bringing to the table and what you're bringing to the table going to make both of us actually better together? Then we all have to have the exact same likes, dislikes, personality traits. Now, sometimes that also then comes to, well, maybe we are complementary, but it's going to come with a healthy dose of tension or conflict. And other times you see couples who get together and they are enough alike that they don't fight hardly at all. And they have great marriages too. But you can have strong marriages across that whole spectrum as long as there's that complementary part of two people bringing themselves to the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Would be the beautiful aspect of marriage, right? Good.
My wife likes her steak like well done. And like, thank goodness for differentiation, because she can enjoy that and good for her, but I'm not going to ruin a really good piece of meat. You see what I'm saying? Like, good for her.
Good for her.
We are different, and I'm not going to cook my steak. I'm not going to burn it to a crisp just because she likes it that way. Right? I'm happy to cook hers that way.
Yes, I see. Absolutely. So yours is what? Medium rare? What's yours?
Oh yeah, medium rare.
Yes, yeah. We have just the opposite in my marriage. So that is very kind of you, because there's something about honoring, like, I will sure cook it that way for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I love you, but I'm not going to cook mine that way.
Yeah.
Because I'm me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love this. I really
enjoy that, Brannon. Even with that, like a Mr. Nice Guy might be like, okay, yeah, I'll cook however you want me to cook it, or I'll cook if you like it like that. I'll eat mine like that.
I love it that way.
I love beef jerky.
I love beef jerky.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You two have a podcast that I've heard about, like I said, in my own therapy practice, Therapy Brothers. Please tell us a bit about that.
We call it the Courageous Call-In podcast. We actually talk to people who are working their own process of where they're at, from healing, shame, trauma, infidelity. They come on and we just have a conversation with them. It's called the Therapy Brothers. And it's one of the best parts of my week.
I can imagine. And what did you call it? What was the first name you used? The
Therapy Brothers podcast, but the Courageous Call-In podcast.
The Courageous Calling podcast.
Yeah.
Beautiful. It's
callers. It's callers that call in and we discuss with them.
Yeah, it's really our callers that are the heroes of that show.
I get it. The Courageous Call. Beautiful.
Yeah. You guys offer so much. Tell us a little bit about the resource. Where could people find you? I'm telling you, after this one, you're going to get floods, of emails and things. Where can people find you? Tell us a little bit more about your resources, and we'll put them in our show notes.
One of the things we have going that Tyler and I love is our retreats that we do. We do a Rising Sun conference for men in September. It's coming up soon, where we do some of this deeper masculinity, trauma work, connection with God work. And so Rising Sun, that's SON.org, is where you can find information about that. Then we also have our online platform. It's reclaimyourheart.com. I always get my dots mixed up. Where we have community, we actually have a full program to rediscover yourself and work through trauma and become the best version of you. So,
yeah, that's excellent. And other plugs? Anything else you guys are working on, that our listeners should be aware of, or you guys on social media?
On social media, Brannon runs his own practice, Therapy Utah. For any kind of in-person therapy, all sorts of trauma work there. I have a practice up in Logan, Utah called Love Strong. That's the therapy arm of things. But other than that, we're pretty thrown in on the reclaimyourheart.com and the risingsun.org.
Awesome. Yeah. We will put those in the show notes, like I said. So thank you so much. Hey, before we let you go, we like to ask all of our guests a couple of questions. The first one is this: what is the key? What is the key to a stronger marriage connection? Let's start with you, Brannon.
Yeah, I think in all my years in doing couples therapy, and I would say that it's a willingness to come to the table with your brokenness and to be able to self-reflect. If you're able to do that and be honest about all of you, it leads to all kinds of good things in a relationship. And so like a Mr. Nice Guy can't do that, right? Not very well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But when both partners can, it's a beautiful thing.
Love it. Yeah, love it. Tyler, what about you?
I would probably add just different words to similar principles. That to me, the strongest marriage is there's the safe marriage where people just get through and they're just safe enough. But the courageous marriage is the one where two people are willing to come and offer both their weaknesses and their strengths, to give one another permission to work on their weaknesses with one another and be reflectors to one another of that growth, and then to offer their strengths to one another. And when you do that, you get something far more than you could be individually. And it comes through real vulnerability, empathy, and accountability.
Awesome, man. Well said. This has been great. Another one is we call it our takeaway of the day. If there's a message, a take-home message you want our listeners to remember, what would that be? What's your takeaway of the day? Let's start with you, Tyler, and then Brannon.
Yeah, I think just based off what we're talking about, first, I just want to tell both of you guys thank you so much. It's so cool for me to be able to come and be a guest on a show that I'm actually a fan of. So You guys do a phenomenal job with what you're doing. I think you're doing so much good in the world. So I just wanted to say thank you first. Takeaway of the day, I think, is if you're listening to this podcast right now and you're having some things stir underneath the surface, whether you're going, if you're feeling mad that we just talked about being a Mr. Nice Guy, you need to look at that. You should go and take a look at what it is that's churning inside of you. And the next best step would be to take that feeling and actually go and approach your spouse and ask about it and have a discussion about it. So open up the discussion about where things don't seem like they're quite fitting, even though everything looks pretty on the outside. And that discussion will be a great kickstart to something even better than what you currently got.
Yeah, that's so great. So important. Yeah. Thanks, Tyler. Brannon, what about you? What's a takeaway of the day?
I think, mine's pretty simple and short, which is to like really examine what is real honesty and authenticity in a relationship. It's not just saying, yes, I did that, or no, I didn't. It's showing up authentic. It's showing yourself in a relationship. And Mr. Nice Guys, bless their heart, like that they're scared to do that. And so to do that work takes courage, and it's hard work. But it's the key to an actual relationship, because you can't know them unless they show themselves. So what is real honesty? What is real authenticity? Start working toward that.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Yeah. Thank you. Liz, what about you? What's your takeaway of the day with Brannon and Tyler?
I love this whole thought about Eastern philosophy, the yin and the yang, and that the more feminine I can be, the more masculine it inspires my husband to be, and vice versa. So women are not helpless, hopeless. They really can take a stand. They can even use my two favorite words of I can't, when they're asked to do something that keeps men kind of in that mode of not being accountable and staying afraid. So it's just such a hopeful message, Tyler and Brannon. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Dave, what about you? What's your greatest takeaway in our time together with the Patrick brothers?
Yeah, Brannon, Tyler, this has been awesome. So thank you so much for coming on. I think my takeaway of the day, so many thoughts in my head. The one that comes to mind kind of stems back from what we began, and that's this difference of wrestling. Okay, but isn't it good to be nice, right? It's good to be kind. So I'm glad that you clarified right kindness and care and compassion, but it's really like the motive. What's going on underneath, and does it stem from fear or this genuine or authentic right desire to be kind, but also to have my own voice, and to that it's not this facade. I am genuine. I am authentic of this is who I am. And that can be a kind, not even nice person. But if there's something that's stirring underneath, that's where some of the struggle then comes from. And then I love that foundation of safety and trust that you talked about, that will eventually erode. So all kinds of little lights and things going on in my brain. So I appreciate you guys coming on today.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
All right, that does it for now, friends. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Stronger Marriage Connection podcast. We'll see you next time.
And remember, it's the small things that create a stronger marriage connection. Take good care.
Thanks for joining us today. Hey, do us a favor and take a second to subscribe to our podcast and the Utah Marriage Commission YouTube channel at Utah Marriage Commission, where you can watch this and every episode of the show. Be sure to smash the like button, leave a comment, and share this episode with a friend. You can also follow and interact with us on Instagram at Stronger Marriage Life and Facebook at Stronger Marriage. So be sure to share with us which topics you loved or which guests we should have on the show next. If you want even more resources to improve your marriage or relationship connection, visit strongermarriage.org, where you'll find free workshops, e-courses, in-depth webinars, relationship surveys, and more. Each episode of Stronger Marriage Connection is hosted and sponsored by the Utah Marriage Commission at Utah State University. And finally, a big thanks to our producer, Rex Polanis, and the team at Utah State University, and you, our audience. You make this show possible. The opinions, findings, conclusions, and recommendations expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of the Utah Marriage Commission.